So here's the thing about galactic exploration. When you're dealing with a ship full of aliens who evolved on planets where the most dangerous thing is a slightly aggressive moss, nobody really wants to be the one to visit an actual death world. And Varath 7? That place had a reputation. The briefing room aboard the Prudent Endeavor was dead silent, which was impressive considering there were 12 different species crammed in there, and the Klaxians usually couldn't shut up with their mandible clicking. Captain Trell, a Gravosian who looked like someone had given a garden slug a uniform and delusions of grandeur, oozed his way up to the display screen with all the enthusiasm of someone heading to their own funeral. "Team," he began, his voice translator giving him this weird, wet quality that nobody had the heart to tell him about. "We have a problem. The medical synthesizer needs a sample of Varath 7's silver spine plant to manufacture the antidote for the Crobian fever outbreak on Station 15. Without it, 3,000 people will die within the week." Dr. Penny, the ship's xenobiologist, chittered nervously. She was a Klaxian, which meant she looked like a praying mantis had a baby with anxiety itself. "Captain, surely there must be another option. Varath 7 is classified as a Class 12 death world. The atmospheric composition alone would dissolve our standard hazmat suits in under 4 minutes. The acid rain has a pH of 4. The local predators can detect electromagnetic signatures from 3 kilometers away. And the Zhuoshoming forms? They're not just toxic, they're actively hostile." Everyone nodded solemnly. A few species equivalent of nodding anyway. The Saurian security officer, Gorb, actually whimpered, which was disturbing coming from something that looked like a T-Rex had hit the gym. That's when Jake Mercer, the only human on board and the ship's botanist, raised his hand. "I'll go." The silence somehow got more silent. Captain Trell's eye stalk swiveled to stare at Jake. "Excuse me?" "I said I'll go. I'm a botanist. It's literally my job. Plus, I've actually read the atmospheric analysis, and honestly, it sounds fine." "Doctor." Penny's mandibles clicked in what Jake had learned to recognize as her "are you absolutely insane" expression. "Jake, did you not hear the part about the acid rain? pH 4? That would burn through your skin." Jake leaned back in his chair, trying not to grin. "Dr. Penny, do you know what else has a pH of 4? Orange juice. Tomatoes. The human stomach acid is pH 2, by the way. We literally produce something twice as acidic just to digest our lunch." You could practically hear everyone's brains breaking. "What about the toxic atmosphere?" Gorb rumbled, clearly hoping someone would talk Jake out of this insane volunteering situation. "Elevated carbon dioxide and sulfur compounds, right?" "Yeah, I checked. It's basically like standing near a volcano. Uncomfortable, sure, but humans have lived near active volcanoes for thousands of years. We're weird like that." Captain Trell's entire body seemed to deflate. "The predators." Yeah, electromagnetic detection. I know. I'll turn off my equipment. Go old school." "Look, Captain, I appreciate the concern, but seriously. Your whole crew evolved on planets where everything is nice and safe and probably has universal healthcare. My planet? My planet is actively trying to kill us, and we decided the appropriate response was to make it our pet. We have more biodiversity and poisonous things than most planets have in total species. This is literally just Tuesday for a human." The briefing room erupted in a chaos of alien languages, all basically saying the same thing. The human has finally lost it. But Captain Trell was desperate, and 3,000 lives were on the line. He looked at Jake with something between admiration and pity. "Very well. You have 12 hours to prepare. And Jake, we'll be monitoring your vital signs the entire time. If anything happens, you'll send Gorb to collect my body, I know." Jake stood up and stretched. "Don't worry, Captain. I'll be back before dinner. Try not to plan my funeral until I'm actually dead, okay?" As Jake left the briefing room, he could hear Dr. Penny clicking frantically. "He is aware this is a death world, correct? Someone did translate that properly?" Jake smiled to himself. They had no idea what they were in for. The descent to Varath 7 was, in Jake's professional opinion, pretty chill. The entire bridge crew of the Prudent Endeavor was treating it like they were watching a live execution, which was actually kind of flattering in a morbid way. "Jake, your pod is entering the upper atmosphere," Captain Trell announced, his voice doing that thing where it got all wobbly when he was stressed. "We're reading atmospheric instability. Are you certain you don't want to abort?" Jake glanced at his readouts. "A little turbulence, nothing crazy. Captain, I once flew through a thunderstorm in a Cessna, held together with duct tape and optimism. This is fine. The acid rain is beginning," Dr. Penny chittered. "Your hull integrity should start degrading in 3, 2. Yeah, it's drizzling." Jake watched the droplets hit his viewport. Looks like normal rain. Smells a bit like a swimming pool, though. Chlorine-y. There was a long pause. Jake, that acid should be eating through your pod right now. Well, it's not. I used the human-grade shuttle. You know, the one built to survive Earth weather, where we have actual acid rain from pollution and nobody even cancels their picnics. Jake started his landing sequence, coming up on the clearing near the Silver Spine Grove. It's actually pretty nice down here. Very green. Reminds me of the Amazon, but with more purple. The pod touched down with a gentle thud. Jake popped the hatch and took a deep breath through his respirator. Not because he needed it, the air was totally breathable, but because if he didn't at least pretend to take precautions, Dr. Penny might have an actual breakdown. Okay, I'm out of the pod. Gravity is 0.9 Earth standard. Temperature is 28 Celsius. Humidity is high, but manageable. Honestly, this is nicer weather than Houston in August. Jake, please describe your surroundings, Doctor, Penny said, her translator barely keeping up with her anxious clicking. Right, so there's a lot of vegetation, very thick canopy, lots of vines. There are these flower things that are definitely tracking my movement, but like, in a curious way, not a murder way. Oh, and I can see some of those flesh-eating plants you guys mentioned. Gorb's voice came through, unusually high-pitched. The Verath snappers? Jake, those can bite through starship hull plating. Jake walked up to one of the plants. It was about waist-high with a large bulbous head covered in what looked like teeth. As he approached, it snapped open and closed menacingly. He tapped it with his boot. It tried to bite him. The teeth scraped harmlessly against his standard-issue work boots. Yeah, so I'm looking at one right now, and honestly, it's just a big Venus flytrap. Might hurt if it got your finger, but starship plating? Really? Did anyone actually test that? Or did someone just see a plant with teeth and panic? Silence from the crew. That was answer enough. Jake continued into the jungle, using his machete to clear the occasional vine. You know what this place actually is? It's just a rainforest. A slightly weird rainforest, sure, but I've been in worse. There was this one time in Borneo where I got chased by a sun bear and fell into a pit of leeches. Now that was a bad day. This is a nature walk. The atmospheric readings, Dr. Penny started, are slightly elevated in CO2. Yeah, I can feel it. Makes you a little short of breath, like being at altitude. You guys would need respirators for sure. But for a human, I could jog in this. Jake paused to examine a cluster of purple fungi. Ooh, these are interesting. Definitely bioluminescent. I'm taking samples. Jake, please stay focused on the mission, Captain Trell urged. Retrieve the silver spine and return to the pod. Yeah, I see the grove up ahead. But Captain, you're not going to believe this. I think I found mint. Mint? Yeah. You know the herb. This plant here smells exactly like peppermint. I'm grabbing some. Jake stuffed a handful of leaves into his sample bag. And holy crap, these berries over here? These taste like black pepper. That's incredible. Jake, did you just eat an unidentified alien plant? Dr. Penny sounded like she was about to faint. I touched a tiny bit to my tongue first. Obviously, I'm not an idiot. But yeah, these are basically peppercorns. Do you have any idea how expensive pepper is on the galactic market? I'm taking, like, all of these. The comms exploded with multiple aliens yelling at once. Jake ignored them and kept collecting samples. He found the silver spine easily enough. It was exactly where the survey data said it would be, but then he noticed something else. A tree with broad leaves that, when crushed, smelled distinctly aromatic. Hey, Dr. Penny, what do you know about tannins? Jake, please stop eating things and get back to the pod. I'm not eating it. I'm just saying, I think this might make tea. Like, actual tea. The galactic tea market is dominated by that one Rigelian plant that tastes like dirty socks. This could be huge. That's when the weather alert started blaring on his wrist display. Jake glanced at the readings. Huh. You guys seeing this storm system? Captain Trell's voice went up an octave. Jake, that's a Category 5 toxic storm. The wind speeds alone will tear you apart. The chemical composition of the rain will liquefy organic matter. You need to get back to the pod. Now. Jake looked at the approaching dark clouds, then at his collection of samples, then at a nearby cave. Formation. Yeah, about that. The pod is 20 minutes away, and this storm is going to hit in 5. I'm not going to make it, Jake, so I'm going to wait it out. There's a cave here. Looks dry. I'll just camp until it passes. The absolute chaos on the comms was almost musical. Jake found it oddly soothing as he gathered his samples and headed for the cave. This was going to be fine. Probably. The cave was actually pretty nice, as caves go. Dry, spacious, and came with a convenient flat rock that was perfect for sitting. Jake set down his sample bags and started organizing his collection like he was setting up a farmer's market stand. "Jake, please confirm you've reached shelter," Captain Trell said, his voice tight with stress. "Yeah, I'm in a cave. It's cozy. Got a nice view of the storm rolling in." Jake pulled out his portable field kit. "You know what? I'm going to make a fire." The comms went silent for a solid 5 seconds. "You're going to— What? Doctor?" Penny shrieked, her translator barely able to handle her panic frequency. "Make a fire. It's getting a little chilly with the storm coming in, and I want to test something." Jake started gathering dry wood from the back of the cave. "Don't worry, there's plenty of ventilation." "Jake, open flame on a death world is absolutely prohibited by 17 different galactic safety regulations." Captain Trell was definitely having some kind of stress response. Jake hoped Gravosians couldn't have heart attacks. "Captain, humans have been making fires for like 500,000 years. We're really good at it. It's kind of our thing." Jake arranged the wood in a neat pyramid and pulled out his emergency fire starter. "Besides, I need to boil water if I'm going to test these tea leaves properly." "Tea leaves? Jake, there are 3,000 dying people waiting for that medical sample. And they'll get it, I promise. But I'm stuck here for at least 2 hours according to the storm timeline, and I'm not just going to sit here in the dark like some kind of animal." Jake struck the fire starter. Sparks flew. The wood caught. "There we go. Perfect." Through his helmet camera, the bridge crew watched in absolute horror as the humans sat cross-legged in front of an open flame on one of the most dangerous planets in known space, looking for all the world like he was on a camping trip. Outside, the storm hit. The wind howled like something dying. Rain lashed the cave entrance with a sound like gravel hitting metal. According to the readings the crew was getting, that rain had a pH of 3.5 and contained 6 different compounds that were highly toxic to most known life forms. Jake pulled out his canteen and a small metal cup. "So, fun fact about humans. We don't just survive hostile environments. We get bored in them and start looking for ways to make them comfortable. It's like evolutionary spite or something." He set the cup near the fire to heat the water, then started examining his leaf samples. The ones that smelled like tea got sorted into a pile. "You know, on Earth, we have this thing called the Camellia sinensis plant. That's where all Earth tea comes from. But humans got so obsessed with hot leaf water that we started just boiling literally any plant we found to see if it made good tea. Chrysanthemum? Sure. Tree bark? Why not? Random berries? Absolutely." "Jake, you cannot seriously be having a tea party right now," Gorb rumbled. Even through the translator, he sounded like he was having an existential crisis. "Not a tea party, Gorb. A scientific experiment. There's a difference. One has finger sandwiches." Jake dropped some of the aromatic leaves into the now steaming water. "Besides, what else am I going to do? Sit here and be scared? Please. I'm from a planet where we invented extreme ironing." "Extreme what?" Dr. Penny asked despite herself. "Ironing. You know, making clothes flat. Except people got bored of doing it normally, so they started doing it in ridiculous places. Mountaintops. Underwater. While skydiving. We're a species that gets bored of safety, Doctor. It's our whole deal." The tea was steeping now, turning the water a rich amber color. Jake took a cautious sniff. "Oh man, that smells amazing. Way better than the Rigelian stuff. It's got this kind of earthy, slightly sweet thing going on." "Please don't drink it," Dr. Penny begged. "I'm going to drink it, Jake." He took a sip. The entire bridge crew held their collective breath. Well, the ones that breathed. Jake's face split into a huge grin. "Holy crap, this is incredible. It's like a mix between green tea and chamomile, with this weird minty finish. Captain, I'm not even joking. We could sell this for a fortune." Captain Trell made a sound like a deflating balloon. "Jake, you're going to give me a stress molt. Sorry, Captain. But you have to understand, this is huge. Do you know how much of human history has been shaped by the spice trade? Wars have been fought over pepper. Empires built on tea. And I'm sitting here on a random death world that apparently grows both." Jake pulled out one of the pepper-like berries and crushed it between his fingers. The smell was sharp and pungent. "I'm seasoning my dinner with this later." Outside, the storm raged. Lightning flashed, actual lightning. Not the weird plasma discharge kind, and thunder rolled across the jungle. The toxic rain pounded down with enough force that it should have been terrifying. Jake just sat there, drinking his alien tea by firelight, occasionally making notes in his field journal. "You know what the funny thing is?" Jake said after a while. You guys classify this as a Class 12 death world, unsurvivable. But humans? We'd call this a challenging vacation spot. Difficult hiking, interesting weather, exotic plants. Some adventure tourism company would charge like 10,000 credits a week to bring people here. That's insane, Gorb said flatly. That's humanity, buddy. We're the species that looked at mountains and decided to climb them for fun. Looked at the ocean and decided to cross it in wooden boats. Looked at space and decided to see what was out there. We don't do safe. We do interesting. Jake poured himself another cup of tea and settled in. The storm would pass. He had samples to catalog, notes to write, and apparently a new business venture to plan. Not bad for a Tuesday. On the bridge of the Prudent Endeavor, Captain Trell was seriously reconsidering his life choices. Specifically, the choice to hire a human botanist. Jake woke up to the sound of someone screaming his name through the comms, which was disorienting, because he'd been having a great dream about opening a cafe. Jake, please respond. Your vital signs flatlined for 3 hours. He yawned and stretched, feeling the pleasant ache of sleeping on stone. Yeah, sorry, I took a nap. Turned off my monitors to save battery. Storm's over, by the way. It's actually a beautiful morning. The sound that came through the comms was somewhere between a sob and a shriek. You what? We thought you were dead. Jake looked at his chronometer. Oh, he'd been asleep for 4 hours, and apparently in that time, the crew had completely lost their minds. Jake, stay where you are, Captain Trell said, and his voice had that dangerous calm that meant someone was about to make a terrible decision. We're sending a rescue team. Rescue team? Captain, I don't need rescuing. I need about 20 minutes to hike back to the pod, and maybe some breakfast. You guys have any of those Centauri protein bars left? The rescue team is already en route. Gorb volunteered. Jake heard a distant sound through the comms that might have been Gorb saying, I absolutely did not volunteer, followed by what was definitely the sound of someone being shoved into a shuttle. Captain, seriously, this is unnecessary. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I found 17 new plant species, and I think at least 3 of them have commercial applications. Oh, and I made a hammock. Want to see? He turned on his helmet camera. The bridge crew got a lovely view of Jake's little cave setup. The fire had burned down to coals. His sample bags were neatly organized. And yes, there was definitely a hammock made from woven vines stretched between 2 convenient rock protrusions. You made a hammock? Dr. Penny sounded like she was on the verge of a breakdown. Yeah, I got bored after the tea. The vine fibers here are really strong. I tested the weight limit and everything. Very safe. Jake started packing up his samples. Look, I appreciate the concern, but Gorb really doesn't need to. Gorb is landing now, Captain Trell interrupted. Jake sighed and grabbed his gear. Fine, I'll meet him at the pod. But this is a waste of resources. He emerged from the cave into what was honestly a gorgeous morning. The storm had cleared the air, and everything smelled fresh and green. The toxic rain had apparently been great for the plants because they looked even more vibrant than before. A few of the Verath snappers were opening their pods to catch the sunlight, which was actually kind of cute. Jake made his way back through the jungle, taking the scenic route and grabbing a few more samples along the way. He was examining a particularly interesting fungus when he heard heavy breathing and the sound of something large crashing through the underbrush. Gorb emerged into the clearing, wearing what looked like a full mech suit made of reflective metal. He was sweating inside his helmet. Jake could see the condensation and moving like every step might be his last. Jake, Gorb panted. Thank the stars. I thought I'd find your corpse. Yeah, about that. I was just napping. Jake held up a sample bag. Want some tea? I brought extra leaves. Gorb stared at him. Just stared. His reptilian eyes were wide with something between horror and disbelief. You're offering me tea. Yeah, it's good. You might need to dilute it because of the caffeine content. But, Jake, I just descended through acid rain in a 50,000 credit protective suit that's already showing signs of degradation. I crossed 2 kilometers of hostile jungle where, according to our sensors, there are at least 40 different predator species. I was nearly eaten by something the scanner couldn't even identify. And you want to give me TEA? Jake considered this. Yes? Gorb made a sound that the translator rendered as anguished roar of the defeated, and then just sat down heavily in the middle of the clearing. The impact of his armored suit hitting the ground actually made a small crater. Are you okay, buddy? No, Jake. I'm not okay. Nothing about this is okay. You survived a night on a Class 12 death world. You made tea. You wove a hammock. You took a nap. Gorb's voice was getting higher with each sentence. I'm having a complete psychological break. This is what that feels like. Jake walked over and patted the side of Gorb's suit in what he hoped was a comforting way. Look, I know this seems weird from your perspective, but humans are just built different. It's not your fault you evolved on a nice planet where the most dangerous thing is, what? A mildly aggressive herbivore. Our apex predator is a bird that sometimes steals sandwiches, Gorb admitted quietly. There you go. My planet has bears, and tigers, and sharks, and jellyfish that can kill you with a touch, and tiny frogs that are so poisonous that just touching them can stop your heart, and spiders, so many spiders. We're basically raised in a nightmare difficulty setting. Gorb was quiet for a moment. Then, Jake, your planet sounds absolutely terrible. Oh, it really is, but it makes you tough. Jake hefted his sample bags. Come on, let's get you back to the shuttle before you have a complete breakdown. I'll make you some of the tea when we're back on the ship. Promise it won't kill you. Probably. Gorb slowly stood up, his suit servos whining with the effort. I'm going to need so much therapy after this. Yeah, Doctor. Penny probably has a cancellation in her schedule, given that she'll also need therapy. Jake started walking back toward the landing site. Oh, by the way, watch out for the snappers. They can't hurt you through that suit, but they startle easy. As if on cue, a Vareth snapper lunged at Gorb. He screamed, actually screamed, and stumbled backward, falling directly onto his back like a turtle. His suit was too bulky for him to get up easily. Jake, to his credit, only laughed a little bit before helping him up. I hate this planet, Gorb muttered. Yeah, but wait until you try the tea. The walk back to the shuttle took 40 minutes, mostly because Gorb kept stopping to make sure various plants weren't about to attack him. Jake spent the time pointing out interesting flora and explaining his commercial spice venture idea. By the time they reached the landing site, Gorb looked like he'd aged 10 years. Getting Gorb back into the shuttle was an adventure in itself. His suit barely fit through the door. Jake just tossed his sample bags in the corner and strapped himself in. Okay, let's go home. I'm starving, and I really want to test these pepperberries on some actual food. Gorb just made a small whimpering sound and started the launch sequence. As they lifted off from Vareth 7, Jake took one last look at the jungle canopy below. Beautiful place. He'd have to come back sometime. Maybe bring camping gear. On the bridge of the Prudent Endeavor, Captain Trell watched the shuttle's ascent and tried to remember when his life had become this complicated. The briefing room was packed. Word had spread through the ship that the human had not only survived the death world but had apparently had a relaxing time doing it. Half the crew was there out of scientific curiosity. The other half just wanted to see if Jake had finally lost his mind. Jake stood at the front of the room with his sample bags lined up on the table like he was presenting at a school science fair. He looked annoyingly well-rested and cheerful. Gorb sat in the corner, still in his mech suit, staring at nothing and occasionally muttering the tea under his breath. Captain Trell oozed up to the podium, eye stalks swiveling to take in the crowd. Thank you all for coming. Jake has returned from Varath 7 with the silver spine sample needed for the medical synthesizer. The antidote is already being produced, and Station 15 has been notified. 3,000 lives will be saved. Polite applause. Jake gave a little bow. However, Captain Trell continued, and his tone suggested he was deeply uncomfortable with whatever came next. Jake has also returned with additional samples and several concerning observations about our classification system for hostile worlds. Jake, if you would. Jake stepped forward, grinning like a kid on show and tell day. Thanks, Captain. Okay, so first things first. I found the silver spine. No problem. It grows in these really accessible groves, by the way. Super easy to harvest. Whoever did the original survey made it sound like you'd need a military escort, but honestly, you could send an intern. Dr. Penny's mandibles clicked nervously. Jake, the original survey team lost 2 members to the hostile environment. Yeah, I read that report. They died because their environmental suits failed, right? Jake pulled up a data screen. I checked the suit specs. They were using standard Galactic Council issue equipment, which is designed for what, exactly? For most Class 6 through 10 environments, Dr. Penny said defensively. Right, most. But here's the thing. Your standard hostile environment is like mild temperature variations and slightly elevated radiation. You're not actually prepared for properly hostile environments because most of you come from planets that are basically paradise worlds. Jake brought up an image of Earth. This is my planet. Temperatures range from -80 to +50 Celsius depending on location. We have weather systems that can level cities, volcanoes, earthquakes, an atmosphere that used to be toxic until plants spent billions of years making it breathable, and we call it home. The room was very quiet. So when I went to Vareth 7, I went with human-grade equipment, which is designed for Earth, which is, And I cannot stress this enough. Way worse than Varath 7. Jake started pulling samples from his bags. Now, let me show you what I found. He held up a bundle of dried leaves. This is what I'm calling Varath black tea. It's got a complex flavor profile, natural caffeine, and according to my preliminary tests, some interesting antioxidant properties. For comparison, here's the current market leader in galactic tea. He pulled out a packet of Rigelian tea. Several crew members made faces. Yeah, exactly. That stuff tastes like someone filtered swamp water through old socks. This? He held up the Varath tea. This is actually good. I've already got a business plan drafted. Captain Trell's eye stalks crossed slightly. Jake, you were on a rescue mission, not a commercial expedition. Multitasking, Captain. It's a human skill. Jake pulled out another bag. These are Varath peppercorns. They're not actually related to earth pepper, but the flavor is nearly identical. Maybe a bit smokier. Do you know what pepper costs on the galactic market right now? Approximately 400 credits per kilogram. Someone from the back called out. It was Ensign Clicks, the ship's quartermaster. Right. And do you know how much of this stuff I could harvest per hectare on Varath 7? Jake grinned. Roughly 3,000 kilograms per growing season. And there are 2 growing seasons per year. You could actually hear people doing the math in their heads. Several crew members' eyes went wide. That's... Ensign Clicks's voice calculation subroutine was clearly working overtime. That's 2.4 million credits per hectare per year. Now you're getting it, Jake said happily. And that's just the pepper. I also found what appears to be vanilla, something like cinnamon, and 3 different plants that produce aromatic oils perfect for perfumes or medicine. Doctor. Penny stepped forward, her scientific curiosity apparently overriding her previous horror. May I examine the samples? Please do. Jake handed over several bags. I've labeled everything with location data, growth conditions, and preliminary chemical analysis. The vanilla analog is particularly interesting because it grows as a vine, which makes it way easier to harvest than earth vanilla. While Dr. Penny started examining the samples with her portable scanner, Captain Trell oozed closer to Jake. You're saying that Varath 7, which we classified as completely unsurvivable, is actually a commercial gold mine? Worse than that, Captain. I'm saying your classification system is fundamentally broken. Jake pulled up a star chart. You classify worlds based on how dangerous they are to the average galactic citizen. Which makes sense, except the average galactic citizen is kind of fragile. No offense. Some taken, Gorb muttered from his corner. My point is, a Class 12 death world for you is maybe a Class 6 for humans. Maybe. I've been to worse places on Earth for vacation. Jake highlighted several systems on the chart. According to the Galactic Database, there are currently 42 worlds classified as uninhabitable due to hostile conditions. I'd bet money that at least half of them are perfectly fine for humans. And probably full of valuable resources that nobody's bothering to check for because everyone's too scared to land. The implications of this were clearly giving Captain Trell some kind of stress response. His slime production had increased noticeably. Jake, he said slowly, are you suggesting that we've been avoiding potentially habitable and profitable worlds simply because they're mildly inconvenient for humans? I mean, yeah, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. Jake pulled up an image of Varath 7's jungle. Look at this place. It's beautiful. Great climate. Rich biodiversity. Valuable plant life everywhere. You could set up a research station. Maybe a resort. The storm I waited out? That was a Category 5 toxic storm according to your classification. For me, it was just a thunderstorm. Loud, sure, but I've sat through worse at a music festival. Dr. Penny looked up from her samples, mandibles clicking excitedly. Jake, these chemical compounds, several of them have medical applications. This one here could be a powerful anti-inflammatory, and this one has a molecular structure I've never seen before. It might have applications in neural regeneration. Cool. Add it to the list of reasons why we shouldn't write off death worlds just because they're a little spicy. Captain Trell was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, a sound like air escaping from a very tired balloon. You're going to want to go back, aren't you? Jake's grin could have powered a small star. Captain, I'm going to want to go to all of them. I was afraid you'd say that. Captain Trell looked around the briefing room. Is anyone else having an existential crisis about humanity's place in the galaxy, or is it just me? Several hands, claws, and tentacles went up. Wonderful. Meeting adjourned. Jake, please don't adopt any Deathworld plants as pets. No promises, Captain. As the crew filed out, still processing the information bomb Jake had just dropped, Doctor. Penny approached him with her scanner. Jake, I have. To admit, when you volunteered for this mission, I thought we'd be recovering your body. Yeah, I got that impression from all the crying. But instead, you've potentially revolutionized our understanding of hostile world classification and opened up dozens of new systems for exploration. She paused. How does your species survive being so recklessly curious? Jake thought about it. Honestly, we don't always. But the ones who do, we get tea and pepper out of it. Totally worth it. Dr. Penny made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cry for help. With Klaxians, it was hard to tell. 3 months later, Jake was sitting in the ship's mess hall, watching the galactic news feed with a cup of Varath black tea and a smug expression that was starting to become permanent. The news anchor, a Diluvian with color-changing skin that currently showed diplomatic neutrality, was struggling to maintain composure. In what experts are calling the most significant economic shift in recent history, the Galactic Council has announced a complete revision of the hostile world classification system. This comes after human botanist Jake Mercer's discovery that many so-called death worlds are, in fact, viable for human exploration and commercial exploitation. The screen cut to footage of Varath 7. It looked beautiful, almost tropical, nothing like the hellscape the original reports had described. Varath 7, previously classified as uninhabitable, has seen its first shipment of what traders are calling miracle spice reach the galactic markets. The cargo, consisting of tea leaves, pepper analogs, and vanilla compounds, sold out within hours. Market analysts predict this could be the beginning of a new economic boom. Captain Trell oozed into the mess hall and settled across from Jake with what could only be described as a defeated slump. You've created a monster. I've created a business opportunity, Jake corrected, taking a sip of his tea. There's a difference. Jake, you know what arrived in my inbox this morning? Fan mail? 473 applications from humans wanting to join exploration crews. Captain Trell's eye stalks drooped. 473. They're calling it Death World Tourism. There's a waiting list. Jake tried not to smile. Failed. That's great, Captain. Shows initiative. There's a human organization calling itself the Extreme Botany Society. They want to charter the prudent endeavor for a 6-month expedition to survey all 42 formerly classified uninhabitable worlds. Okay, that's actually a great idea. Did you say yes? Jake, they offered me 3 times our normal charter rate. So you said yes. Captain Trell made a sound like a deflating balloon. I said I'd consider it, against my better judgment. Which, I'm realizing, dissolved completely the day I hired you. The news feed continued. In related news, the Galactic Council is now debating whether to classify humans themselves as an invasive species, given their apparent ability to thrive in environments previously thought to be completely hostile to life. Doctor. Penny clicked into the mess hall, moving with the kind of manic energy that meant she'd been mainlining caffeine from Jake's tea supply. Jake, have you seen the xenobiology reports from the follow-up team on Varath 7? The one you sent last week? They found 43 new species of medicinal plants. 43. Do you know what this means? That I was right and everyone else was being dramatic. That we've been ignoring entire ecosystems because we were too afraid to land on planets with weather. Dr. Penny's mandibles were clicking so fast her translator was struggling. The pharmaceutical applications alone could revolutionize medicine. And that's just one world. Gorb trudged in, still looking vaguely traumatized. He'd refused to take off his security armor for 2 weeks after the Varath 7 mission. I heard humans. Are we talking about the Death World thing again? Always, Jake said cheerfully. Want some tea? That tea gave me heart palpitations. Yeah, you have to dilute it. I told you that. You told me after I drank 3 cups. Jake shrugged. Live and learn. The news feed had moved on to an interview with a Galactic Council representative who looked like they'd aged significantly in recent months. We want to assure citizens that the reclassification of hostile worlds does not mean these planets are safe. They remain dangerous for most species. However, for human exploration teams with proper equipment and training, they may present viable opportunities for research and resource extraction. Proper equipment, Jake snorted. I went down there in hiking boots and a respirator I didn't even need. You made a hammock out of vines, Gorb said flatly. That's not proper equipment. That's a cry for help. That's efficiency, Gorb. There's a difference. Captain Trell's communicator beeped. He checked it and his slime production immediately increased. Oh no. What? Jake leaned forward. The Galactic Council wants you to testify before the Environmental Classification Committee. That sounds boring. They want you to present your findings and recommendations for the new classification system. That sounds very boring. They're offering you a consulting position, permanent, with full expedition support and a research budget of 5 million credits per year. Jake paused mid-sip. Okay, that sounds less boring. Jake, please tell me you're not actually considering this. Captain, they're offering me 5 million credits to go camping on death worlds and collect interesting plants. That's literally my dream job. Dr. Penny's mandibles stopped clicking. Wait, does this mean you'd be leaving the prudent endeavor? Jake looked around the mess hall, at Captain Trell, who'd taken a chance on a weird human with questionable survival instincts. At Dr. Penny, who'd gone from thinking he was suicidal to being his enthusiastic research partner. At Gorb, who still flinched when anyone mentioned Vareth 7 but had saved his life nonetheless by agreeing to the rescue mission. Nah, Jake said finally. But I'll take the consulting gig as a side job. Someone's got to make sure you guys don't classify a slightly cloudy planet as uninhabitable. Plus, this ship has the best crew in the fleet. We're literally the only ship that would hire a human, Captain Trell pointed out. See? Best crew. The newsfeed had moved on to a commercial. A sleek advertisement showed images of exotic plants and alien landscapes, with text that read, Vareth 7 Spice Company, from Death World to Dinner Table. Oh good. Someone made a company out of my discovery without asking, Jake said mildly. Actually, ensign clicks appeared from nowhere, which was impressive for someone with 4 legs and a tail. I may have filed some patents in your name, and incorporated a business, and secured the exclusive harvesting rights to Vareth 7 Southern Continent. The royalty payments should start coming in next quarter. Jake stared at the quartermaster. Clicks, have I mentioned you're my favorite person on this ship? Several times, but I won't stop you from saying it again. Captain Trell put his head down on the table. Or would have, if he'd had a head in the traditional sense. Instead, he just sort of deflated into a puddle of existential despair. I've lost complete control of this vessel, he muttered. You never had control, Captain, Jake said kindly. You just had the illusion of control. It's better this way. Less stressful. I'm more stressed now than I've ever been in my entire life. Yeah, but it's exciting stress. Character-building stress. A new message popped up on Jake's personal communicator. He glanced at it, and his grin somehow got wider. Oh, this is great. What now? Gorb asked with the tone of someone who expected only bad news. Remember how I mentioned there were 42 death worlds in the database? Jake turned his communicator around to show them. Someone just sent me a list of all of them, ranked by potential commercial value. They want to know if I'm interested in preliminary surveys. No, Captain Trell said immediately. The top-ranked one is a volcanic world with an atmosphere that's 90% sulfur dioxide. Absolutely not. But it apparently has crystal formations that are naturally occurring. Superconductors. Jake, and the survey notes mention geothermal vents that could support extremophile plant life. Captain Trell looked at Dr. Penny. Dr. Penny looked at Gorb. Gorb looked at Jake, who was practically vibrating with excitement. This is how it starts, Gorb said quietly. This is how humans take over the galaxy, not with weapons or conquest, with tea and enthusiasm and a complete disregard for their own safety. Don't forget Pepper, Jake added. The Pepper is important. One volcanic death world, Captain Trell said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute defeat. One, and only if the Extreme Botany Society's charter falls through. Deal. Jake stood up, already pulling up planetary data. This is going to be great. I'll need to bring different equipment though. Heat-resistant gear. Maybe some sampling drones for the really hot spots. Oh, and I should probably research Earth's extremophiles for comparison data. He wandered out of the mess hall, muttering to himself about thermal suits and mineral compositions, leaving the rest of the crew in stunned silence. Dr. Penny was the first to speak. Did we just agree to let him visit a volcano planet? I think we did, Captain Trell confirmed miserably. At least it can't be worse than Vareth 7, Gorb offered. They all looked at each other. They were thinking the same thing. With Jake, it could definitely be worse, but it would also probably be profitable. And that, Captain Trell reflected, was perhaps the most terrifying thing about humans. They didn't just survive impossible situations, they found ways to make them lucrative. The newsfeed continued in the background. And in other news, human botanist Jake Mercer has been nominated for the Galactic Scientific Achievement Award for his contributions to hostile world research. When asked for comment, Mercer reportedly said, and I quote, "It wasn't that hard. You guys are just dramatic." Captain Trell watched the feed and felt something that might have been pride or might have been a stress-induced aneurysm. With humans around, it was genuinely hard to tell the difference. Somewhere in the ship's botanical lab, Jake was already planning his next expedition, humming cheerfully while he organized his samples. In his head, he was making a list. Better camping gear, more sample bags, maybe some actual seasoning for ship food, and definitely more tea. The galaxy had no idea what it was in for, but Jake did, and he couldn't wait.